say there is a nation and there's no halacha, because I would agree with you one thing. Once you have a nation and you have a state, you have a Jewish state, whatever it is, you need some kind of law. Some kind of halacha you need. To what extent? That's a different question. But I'm questioning something else. Is there a need for a Jewish people who becomes the chosen people if, in fact, Avraham Avinu, Yitzchak and Yaakov would have continued to live as they did, right? Then, and also people would have picked up. You remember the Midrash which says that Avraham Avinu went around and he was Mitgayer, all sorts of different non-Jews at the time. Interestingly enough, they had no idea what happened to them, right? They disappeared. But imagine that they would not have disappeared. And they would have stick with Avraham Avinu, right? So you would then not have a nation which was, or you would not have a people which was growing out of Avraham and Sarah and Yitzchak and Rivka and so on, but you would just have loads of different human beings who have no family relationship at all. They all together would have created a movement, a religious movement. I wouldn't call it a nation by any means. And that religious movement is a movement which has tremendous religious experience, and that is what it is, and for that you don't need halacha. You remind me of Spinoza, because Spinoza, one of his attacks on the halacha exactly is that thing. He says that as long as the Jewish people were living in the land of Israel, and there was the Jewish state, he agrees that you need laws. His point was that once we lost the state, the halacha is no longer applicable. Yes? Why? Because halacha, he says, its function is only to keep people under constraint so that you can build a society. Yes? I am saying something else. I'm saying, who says that you need to have a religious society? What you have to have is individuals who have an experience of God, each one in his own way. That is what the Chabad Hadavavot is speaking about. That is what Professor Evans is speaking about. Everybody comes to his God his own way, and that can be in many different forms and not at all bound by the halacha. Right? But once more, I'm only following a road which I am not 100% sure about, because I don't have the point of departure is correct, and that is to say that the greatest religious service to God is to come out of free will to Him. I have my doubts if this is true. I'm saying, in case this is true, then I could make the points which I just made.
I do kind of go back to Abraham and Yitzchak, how do we know when we were at that point? To me, it doesn't seem like a realistic.
How do we?
How would we ever know we were at a spiritual point that Abraham and Yitzchak people were at? It doesn't even seem like a point of comparison.
Well, this is indeed a good question, which I don't have an absolute answer on. The Rambam discusses this, by the way. The Rambam is of the opinion that when the Mishkan was built in the desert, that moment was the moment which the Jews came on the level of Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, and the Ohel Moed was actually the Ohel of Avraham Avinu. Right? Authors like Rashi and Sephorno don't seem to agree with that at all. It actually relates to a very interesting issue. I come later back to this. And that is the temple an ultimate goal, or is the temple also an emergency institution? Right? So the Rambam says, no, it's the ultimate goal. He says at the beginning of Sefer Shemot. But there are authors like the Sephorno and probably Rashi who says, no, this was something which was again necessary as a way before the ultimate goal, where you can do without the temple and you can do without the Ohel Moed or without the Mishkan at all. So I agree. It is definitely a matter of theory, right? If I buy into the theory that Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov were on a tremendous level, like the Rambam clearly says, and he believes you can only get to it, or the Jewish people got to it, when the Mishkan was being built, right? So if you take that as your point of departure, then I can create the theory which I'm creating over here. I cannot prove that. That's always the problem with philosophy. It's also true about Jewish philosophy. You can't prove these things. But it is a way of creating a concept which then will answer certain issues about halacha, about the Jewish tradition, and so on. I can definitely oppose myself by a completely different way of looking to all this, which totally undermines what I'm saying. But that's the fun of it. The fun of it is that I'll take one stand, and perhaps next year I say exactly the reverse. But I think it is important that this particular view needs to be discussed as such.
Before we had Matan Torah, there was this special way that we were able to come close to God that now we're not able to. I think a serious challenge to that is, why weren't we able to? Then we had an opportunity. Why did we need, and how did we get to the point where we needed this Torah? I think it's what happened. What was there a mass, and going along with that was, did God plan for that to happen, or did he know? Did he know? And that's important, because in Torah it says that God tells Abraham that you will be slaves in Egypt for 400 years, and that I will take them out. It seems to a certain extent that there was a process that was happening. According to what you're saying, it seems like, no, that happened later. Only later did suddenly HaKadosh Baruch Hu realize that this isn't working, I have to make a change. And I don't see how this all comes together.
Well, you are fully right, but don't forget that the moment that we are asking the question, what was God thinking at the time, we definitely don't know the answer to that question.
But you're claiming to know it. Your whole theory, I think, supposes that. God was thinking at the time of the Torah, okay, I need to change. You kind of
I thought you were
open the
speaking.
door on that.
Okay, fair. What I thought that you were asking is what happened at the time, and if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have known beforehand that that would be happening, he would already have stepped in an earlier stage. Or he would have prevented it.
I guess we can edit that part out if it seems ludicrous to ask.
Okay, I do not know what went on in the mind of God, neither do I speak about this. I'm only saying one thing. I'm saying what happened was that there was a Yerida. I'm not exactly clear why the Yerida took place after the 12 tribes, when things went down. It may be that historically speaking it has something to do with the let's say, experience in Egypt. You can obviously ask me back, so why then have the experience of Egypt? Keep it under the highest condition. But I think that you're now entering into the question about freedom of will on one side and God's foreknowledge on the other side, which we obviously do not know the answer. I'm only saying that since the Torah tells us that Am Yisrael went into Shibut Mitzrayim, there they lost much of its grandeur and it lost much of its relationship as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, perhaps a little earlier already. Reasons which I do not know, only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows. But then, speaking the Lashon B'nei Adam, there is a moment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I need to step in. In a similar way, by the way, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to interfere after Adam Rishon and Chava eat from the tree of knowledge, right? There is also a change. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to step in and tell them to leave the Gan of Eden. They have to put on garments and things like that. Why you have to go in history through that experience of falling and getting up again, I do not know the answer.
Well, how do you deal with the fact that the Shibut, that Kufa was always planned?
That what?
It was always, God seems to have planned it that way.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Prediction of Wuhan, the Brit, and the 400 years.
There are many ways of looking to that, and there can be also ways. You can say it is all planned beforehand. That's one way of looking to it. It can only be also be argued. No, this is what man did. They, for whatever reason, did what they did. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not plan this, and this is what happened. And then after man did what he did, Hashem has to respond to that accordingly by, for example, an emergency, let's say, giving of the Torah to get them out of even greater problems. I think what you're touching onto is an enormous philosophical problem which nobody ever solved, and that is the question about foreknowledge on one side, HaKadosh Baruch Hu planning everything, or leaving it up to man to decide what to do or not to do. I'm just saying, in my discussion it doesn't matter if there was a plan or was no plan. I'm only saying one thing. Whatever it was, there was a moment when man was no longer living on the level of Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov. Hashem now perhaps out of his love, wants to help mankind out. And how does he do that? By an emergency regulation, and that is by giving the Torah. That's all what I'm saying. It needs a lot of